Congress is asking new questions about the U.S. attacks on alleged drug boats off of South America. Those strikes have killed dozens of people, including one that reportedly targeted survivors of an initial attack. Meanwhile, President Trump raised the pressure on Venezuela's president, warning pilots not to fly over that country. Nancy Cordes is at the White House with more on all this. Nancy, good morning.
Tony, good morning to you. Over the weekend, President Trump appeared to send a major signal that some kind of strike was imminent, but nothing materialized, which left the Venezuelans and members of Congress here wondering exactly what he has planned and when. This comes as a new report from the Washington Post leads some lawmakers to ask whether the Pentagon has committed a war crime.
There is a buildup that the president has not explained.
Ohio Republican Mike Turner spoke for many lawmakers Sunday when he questioned the massive U.S. mobilization in the Caribbean.
It is certainly a significant concern in Congress.
Those concerns grew more urgent this weekend after President Trump announced that airlines and pilots should consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety.
Don't read anything into it.
When Trump was asked why he issued that warning, he would only say this.
Because we consider Venezuela to be not a very friendly country.
Now there's a new controversy over those strikes on suspected Venezuelan drug boats. The Washington Post reported that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave an order to kill everybody on board before the first boat strike September 2nd. When two survived, the Special Operations Commander overseeing the attack reportedly ordered a second strike to comply with Hegseth's instructions. And the two men were blown apart in the water.
This rises to the level of a war crime, if it's true.
Now, lawmakers in both parties are vowing to investigate.
If it was as if the article said, that is a violation of the law of war.
Hegseth called the story fabricated and derogatory and made light of it Sunday night by posting a pretend children's book cover depicting an armed turtle firing on drug boats. President Trump was asked Sunday night if he thought a follow-on strike like that would be legal.
I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine, and if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
But both the House and Senate Armed Services Committees have announced they are going to look into this, which is notable because both committees are led by Republicans who tend to give this administration a lot of leeway.
Now to the growing controversy over deadly U.S. airstrikes on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean. The White House at first denied there was a follow-up attack that killed two survivors of the first strike. Now it says, yep, there was a second attack, but insists that it was all very legal. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faces new questions from lawmakers in both parties about exactly what happened here. Nancy Cordes is at the White House with the latest on this. Nancy, Rob just said something about a dicey commute. I think things are getting very dicey at the White House this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Quite dicey, Gayle, when you have lawmakers openly asking whether this was a war crime. Now, just days ago, the Secretary of Defense called this story fabricated. He said it was inflammatory. But then yesterday, the White House confirmed the military did make a second strike on a suspected Venezuelan drug boat in September.
Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes.
Reading from prepared remarks, the White House press secretary said Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth did order this strike on a suspected drug boat on September 2nd, but did not issue an order to kill everybody, as the Washington Post first reported this weekend. Instead, she said it was Navy Admiral Frank Bradley's decision to order a second strike to ensure the boat was destroyed.
Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law.
Her comments came just one day after President Trump claimed there was no second strike.
No, I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine, and if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
The shifting explanations frustrated lawmakers from both sides, who are now demanding to see the orders and the video of the second strike.
We're going to conduct oversight, and we're going to try to get to the facts.
It's already been crystal clear that Pete Hegseth is the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in American history.
Levin insisted the strike was conducted in self-defense and did not violate the rules of armed conflict. But DOD's Law of War manual states that shipwrecked combatants are in a helpless state, and it would be dishonorable and inhumane to make them the object of attack.
The second strike is a war crime because these individuals were injured. They were in the water. The basic rules of war that are involved here make very clear that you do not strike wounded people in the water in order to kill them.
That's coming from a former Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta. We are also learning more about a recent call between President Trump and Venezuelan President Maduro. The Miami Herald is reporting that Maduro told Trump he's willing to leave the country in exchange for full legal amnesty, among other demands. Trump rejected his offer, according to the Herald, and instead told the Venezuelan president that he had a week to resign and leave the country, which has not happened.
The Trump administration is rejecting accusations that at least one of its attacks on an alleged drug boat may amount to a war crime. The administration posted this clip back in September, or of the September strike. At issue is this: a second attack a short time later, which killed 2 survivors of the initial strike. The White House now acknowledges that second attack did happen, insisting that attack was legal. So was it? Joining us now is Alberto Gonzales, who served as the U.S. Attorney General under President George W. Bush and is a fantastic person to discuss this with. Mr. Attorney General, thank you very much for being here. The basic question for Americans at home is whether the U.S. military killed 2 effectively defenseless survivors clinging to the side of a drug boat that had already been hit. If that story stands up, is that a war crime?
Yeah, I think that what we have here, we do have a conflict of a non-international nature. But the Geneva Convention applies even to these kinds of conflicts. And the rules are clear that if you've got someone who does not pose a threat and is defenseless, that to summarily execute them without any kind of due process would be a violation of armed conflict. So, yes, I think that there is some serious questions that are I think we all need to explore. And hopefully Congress and others will get to the bottom of to see exactly what happened. But the reporting would lead me to conclude that, yes, in fact, if the facts bear out as we currently understand, that there was a violation of armed conflict.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, this is a major question of presidential power, of the U.S.'s role in the Caribbean and all over the world. And so I think there's a lot at stake in finding out exactly what happened. You want Congress to take a look. Congress is taking a look. But what other entity is the Justice Department empowered to investigate something like this?
The Justice Department, I think, as an initial matter, will defer to the military justice. But in fact, the department may get involved in investigating what happened here. But we have to remember that the President of the United States controls the Department of Justice. And so whether or not there would be any kind of investigation or a thorough investigation by the Department of Justice in this matter, I think based on past experience, people have questions about that. I think, and the other thing to remember is the Supreme Court has made it very clear that in areas of military conflict, there's a great deal of deference going to be paid to the President of the United States as to whether or not what was the threat level, use of force on international waters. Yeah. Court is going to be very deferential. And so from my perspective, I think it's going to be public opinion. It's going to be Congress who's going to have primary responsibility in getting to the bottom of what happened here. And hopefully it will result in some kind of accountability. Now, why does this matter? Putting aside the politics, the reason it matters is because how we treat people that are helpless, that are defenseless, particularly in an armed conflict, we care about it. Why? Because someday we're going to have soldiers in that situation where they're helpless, they're defenseless. We want them to be protected by rules of engagement. And so the notion that Secretary Hegseth said recently about, we don't care, we want to be unshackled by rules of engagement, I think is extremely dangerous. Rules of engagement exist in large part to protect our soldiers in the event they find themselves in a situation where they're at the mercy of an adversary.
Yeah, can we look at the bigger picture here? Because Attorney General Pam Bondi has denied claims that she is operating at the president's direction, that the Justice Department is still an independent agency. Do you see it that way?
I don't. From my perspective, it appears that it doesn't appear to be so. But again, I always remind myself as the Attorney General, former Attorney General, I don't know what I don't know. Oftentimes, actions, decisions by the Department of Justice, by the leadership of the department, are based upon information that is classified, that is privileged. And so perhaps if I had the same kind of information, the same kind of priorities, the same kind of push by the White House, that I might make a different decision. It is true, though, I think it's pretty clear, that since Watergate, there's been an ethos at the Department of Justice to operate all investigations, to conduct all investigations and prosecutions independent from the White House. I had instances when I was the Attorney General, when I personally told President Bush, do not get involved in this ongoing investigation. It was consistent with the norms following Watergate. And also, it protects the president from charges of political interference.
Mr. Attorney
and
General.
so I think that we're seeing something. I think the attitude, there's a difference today.
Mr. Attorney General, I'm sorry,
Yes.
the computer is going to take us off. Thank you very much.